you guys doing? Good evening. It seems like it's been a while, but also not like it wasn't that long ago, like yesterday. Time is really strange. I guess I should get to the most important thing. Is Teshuvah. I don't think I would have. I'm not sure if I would have had the motivation to do a stream tonight if it wasn't for being shown the error of my ways, and so I have to rectify and hopefully repair any damage that I've done. For the last, I don't know, like at least a year, I've said that the the only purpose for a man to release for seed to leave his body, that is in line with the Torah and God's wishes, is in an attempt to be a partner with God to create new life for him, for God to create new life, for the man and the woman to be vessels for God to bring new life into the world. But that is not that's not wholly correct. I think it's great when God shows you your mistakes in such a clear way, to where it gives you the ability to do teshuvah. And it's kind of weird. My memory may not be 100% correct, but if it's close, I think I watched a shear from Jewish Hashkafa 11 that talked about this. I think yesterday, and then Rabbi Yaron uploaded his latest shiur from, I think, a couple days ago, Wednesday or Thursday, probably something like that. It was a live event somewhere in Florida, where he talked about the weekly parasha. I think it's pronounced something like Akramot, Acremote, something like that. Acremote. I'm not sure what Acre is. I haven't looked at the Hebrew translation. I know what mote is. Mot or mote. Mote is death. Or mote, something like that. But technically this week is pretty much over for most of the world. But since it's still kind of close, I figured it'd be good to go over. Plus, it relates to doing teshuvah. But in the lecture where he was talking about the weekly Torah portion, he talks about I think it may have been in a live lecture anyway. I think it may have been a response to a question someone asked from the audience. I can't recall exactly, but he went over what I learned from the day before, from a lecture they did just about 2 years ago, almost exactly. So like May, like end of May or something like that, from 2020, or maybe it was the beginning of June. Jewish Hashkafa number 11. And the subject is like forbidden relations, and then this week and next week's Torah portion are closely related, or like the polar opposites of each other. This week is, or I guess I should say, last week's. From Monday to Sunday at dusk, or Saturday at dusk, like a few hours ago, give or take, depending on where you are. Akramot or Akramot is about forbidden relations. Like, don't uncover the nakedness of your father and your mother and your sister and your father's wife, your father's daughter, your basically like anyone in close relation, aunts, uncles, cousins. Or maybe not cousins, but aunts and uncles. Anyone, even like half siblings. Married women and animals and other dudes. pretty much anyone that isn't your wife. And you're not supposed to make, you know, not supposed to make a close relative your wife or your husband. I don't think, I'm not sure if it applies to the Goyim, but the only case I'm aware of where it's acceptable to marry the wife of a close relative is if like your brother dies without having a child. If his wife is okay with it, it's good to if you're single, I guess nowadays anyway, it's good to marry her and give her a kid and name it after your brother. But there are three that I know of clearly. I saw it was written that there was one sage that said that there was four situations where or four reasons for a man to have relations with his wife. And they're in order of importance. The number one, which should should always kind of be the at least if you want to be as holy as possible, is to always have in mind the intent and the possibility, to perform as if in a way where it's feasible for a child to be born. Regardless of whether whether a guy thinks he's sterile or not, or the same goes for a woman. Whatever happens, is up to God. As long as you do it in a way where if he wants to make the miracle happen, it's possible. That's the number one thing. Number two is to please your wife. The man's pleasure has no it's not taken into account. It's not 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 really that important. Probably for a couple reasons. One, it's it's usually not that challenging for that to occur for a dude. But two, the other reason is, it's good not to focus on it too much. Otherwise, you become like an animal. And the very last reason is so the man is doesn't sin. But that, like I said, that's the farthest down on the list. For somewhat similar reasons as not being an animal. It's said that it's best for single guys not to learn too much about the topic, so they don't get preoccupied and led astray or have impure thoughts. When I was reading the weekly Torah portion earlier, I saw a few things that stood out. I think Akrimot is after the death, or after death, something like that. As the parasha opens with, and the Lord spoke to Moshe after the death of the two sons of Aaron when they came near before the Lord and died. I was thinking about something else. How there's the specificity of the Hebrew language, and like certain words that are used at certain times, and with starting with Vayikra, with the book of Leviticus, there's a lot of specific instructions with regard to the Mishkan, the tent of meeting, and the how the Kohanim are to perform certain rituals, unlike the process of sanctifying themselves and getting ready. And a lot of times it will say like one of the specific ones is like to anoint themselves and put on the holy garments and to wash their hands. I believe it's their hands and their feet prior to entering. I forget if it's the tent of meeting altogether or if it's just the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies. But it said, you know, God tells Moshe to tell Aaron that, or Aaron, that you know, do these things so that you do not die, or so that you will not die, or you know, depending on the translation. I think some of the more older traditional ones say like lest you die. And that's pretty clear, because you're gonna, you know, if you enter a holy place where God rests His presence in this world, and you're not clean, you haven't taken the steps to purify yourself, like He said, then you just won't be able to survive His presence is overpowering for the unclean. So coming into contact, or you know, being not having any veil there, the person physically dies. Well, that's just the physical death. But then most of the time when the Torah says to do something so that you should live, it means like physically live in this world, but also like to really live, to choose life. I wish I had a better understanding of Hebrew sometime. Most of the time. There's so many things that a person just can't grasp even remotely closely in any kind of translation. I guess I should clarify for anyone who can't spell out acromat or acromat. It's Leviticus 16 as the first section of this Torah portion. And Leviticus 16:2. And the Lord said to Moshe, speak to Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place within the veil before the covering which is upon the ark, that he die not, for I appear in the cloud upon the ark cover. It goes on to say, instructing him or reminding about the bull offering and the sin offering, and then the offering of the two goats, and then talks about the burning the incense. In a lecture, I think about a week or so ago, from Rav Anava, he said the reason for the incense is it acts as like a countermeasure for the Satan. So that if anyone isn't, absolutely pure, the at least like in the nation, and just as, I guess, extra protection for the Kohanim, the burning of the incense protects them all from the Satan, from the Malakama, the angel of death, when they go into the tabernacle, and into the tent of meeting. I think I remember reading this section of the Torah like a year or two ago. It was one of those parts that used to like really kind of wig me out, or not know what to think about, the scapegoats and Azazel. Then I finally I got to a point where I learned enough to figure out what all the or not all, but most of the most of the references to like Moloch or Molech, and the different Baalim, like the different different fake gods. And then the learning about like what the angels really are, and, especially the Satan, like the fact that it's just a robot. I mean, as far as something people can understand, it's just a heavenly creature that was created and programmed to do a really specific task. And so I figure Azazel was something like that. It doesn't really matter what it is. Because it says, it says to do it in the Torah. And there's only, that's really all that matters. One is that God said it, and two, it's not God, so you shouldn't be afraid of it, and you shouldn't worship it. That's kind of hard for people to not be freaked out by things that are beyond their comprehension, though, especially terrifying things. It's hard for most people just not to be afraid of people. It's a slow process. There was another word or a verse in this Torah portion that really stood out to me. Actually, I think it was a couple where the same kind of similar phrase was used in a couple verses. This verse has shows about how allows a person to understand the transfer of tuma, of impurity, was talking about how a member of the nation will be appointed to take the goat that is sent out to Azazel, out to the wilderness, that gets all the sins of the nation put upon it. After he sends out the goat and he comes back, he has to wash his clothes and his body, and he'll be unclean until nightfall. So the transferring of all the sins onto the goat is like an actual. I mean, it's not something that you can really see. Not that, it's not something that most people can see, but all the sins get put into the goat, or on it, I should say, and carried off to a desolate place. And touching this goat with the sins on it, a person acquires or contracts some impurity. It's obviously not all the impurity from all the sins. They'd probably die if it was, but it's it's still enough to become impure. Here's the one I was thinking of. It's 1629 Leviticus. And this shall be a statute forever to you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, the homeborn or the stranger that sojourns among you. My Hebrew is far from complete or perfect, but I believe the word that's used in the Torah here for among you is betokem, bet tav vav kuf mem. And the bet is like a prefix. It doesn't mean like with. I mean, in some respects it means like with, or something like that, but it's more than that. It means in, like a part of. So when they talk about the Hagar, the stranger that sojourns, as a convert that has finished, has converted, has had his Brit Milah, and man or woman, when they, after they've been immersed in a mikveh, in ritual water, So they become cleansed, cleansed of impurities. And just like in not last week's parashah, but the week before, right before, or the parashah for Pesach, like right on from Sunday through when Pesach starts. I guess no, that's not that one. That was it was actually the parashah or the reading for the week of Pesach. Uh, Exodus. Um, I think it's Exodus 12:21 to 50, somewhere around there, where they talk about who who is uh, allowed to keep Pesach. And he uses a very similar language, although there's more specific language given for Pesach than for Yom Kippur. Because, you know, Yom Kippur is the judgment of the entire world. But even still, you know, the Goyim aren't to take part in any kind of, you know, ceremony or celebration or fasting. But Pesach is like I mean, it's not, I don't want to say the most important, but it's the head. Even though, you know, Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year, Pesach is like the head of the first holiday. And the most significant. At least as far as I understand. I could be very wrong though. I was thinking about something else. After watching I haven't finished watching the last lecture from Rev Rubin. It's like a 4-hour shiur. I think I'm barely maybe halfway through it yet. What's the other thing I was thinking about was how if a person really toils for it, you know, they get showed the truth, and the The more they toil, the more gets revealed. I'm not sure if I can remember everything I was thinking about with the New Testament earlier. But Yeshu is the complete antithesis of the Torah. I mean, in almost every way imaginable. He's one of those really sneaky guys, kind of like the Satan. Comes dressed in the truth, or what sounds like it. It looks good. It sounds good. It feels good. But it's not any of those things. I mean, the most important figure in the Torah is Moshe. And if you put the two side by side, not physically, but just who they are as people, what they did, and how they acted, and you really look, you can see there's something seriously wrong. Moshe is the most humble man. He didn't want any credit for anything. He even begged God to change the Torah so it would sound like he was not as important. And while God uses people as vessels to bring salvation from people suffering, all they are is vessels. It's just some kind of some miraculous living piece of meat that God made animate. That had the merit, for to bring salvation in whatever moment in the Torah. It happened numerous times. And there's the big one, which is when Moshe, did what God said and went and told Pharaoh to let the Israelites go so that they could worship God and get away from the filth of Egypt. But there's numerous other, lesser occasions where, either one person or a number of people were saved from death or suffering or starvation. And, and every one of them was a test to see if people would remain humble, whether there's the salvation and the miracle that looked like they wrought was large or small, whether they would remain humble or whether they would try to take the credit, whether it was in their own mind or it was out loud in front of other people. And the New Testament is the entire opposite of that. Saying something like, no one comes to the Father but through me. I mean, unless he's talking about a different Father. Which could be the case. I mean, anyone that's done any kind of research on the like wording and symbolism and sign of like astrology in the New Testament knows that there's some really sketchy stuff, to say the least. When you couple all that, the morning star and the sun and all the rest of the stuff from the Torah and the other pagan, horrible, disgusting practices, both before, during, and after the time of Yimak Shimo Viziko. I don't know how anyone can stomach it, other than just being so invested and not wanting to put in the work tear that evil root out of their heart. Now, one thing's for sure. Teshuvah doesn't get easier if you put it off. And there's definitely times where it feels easier, but the longer you go and the more damage that you do, no matter what it feels like, the reality is it's always getting harder because you make more filth on your soul, and you damage the world, and you screw up other people. I ought to know. I was a professional. I mean, not really, but definitely far more of a Maktir Rabin than I would ever want to be. Especially don't want to be again. Someone causes the public to sin. I mean, objectively, and thankfully, I had a relatively small influence of people compared to a lot of people, especially now, these days. But still, the person is paid for the fruits of their labor. Whether that fruit is good or it's wholly rotten. I've been thinking about a couple mitzvot the last few weeks, or couple weeks, give or take. One of them, I'm not sure. Not sure if Goyim can do. And I'm not sure exactly how to do it. Even if we're allowed how to do it right. The time might have been past anyway. The other one is one anyone could do. It's just a blessing on food. But Rev Reuben always uses the example of giving a bracha, a blessing on an apple. Like when he talks about giving a blessing before eating. I think that's the most common one I've heard him use is blessing an apple. There's one story where he gave over about this Jew that was on some trip, and these guys, like, I'm probably going to butcher this story, but something happened, and Like the people on the boat like kicked him off the boat. He was on some business trip or something. I think they stole all his stuff and they dumped him on some deserted island. And this island had some kind of fruit trees on it. I can't remember if they were apples or something else, but and he would eat like one piece of fruit every day, and he would say a blessing on the fruit, and then he would eat it. And eventually all the fruit was gone except for one last piece of fruit. And he figured he was going to starve to death, and he was waiting for a long time to eat this piece of fruit. And he was really hungry, so his bracha, his blessing that he said had full intent, full covenant, to where he was eternally grateful for this, not just for this last piece of food before he was going to die, but for a really good, amazing, flavorful piece of food. A wonderful piece of fruit that God created. So he said the blessing and then he ate the fruit. And then as soon as he finished eating the fruit, he saw a boat. And I can't remember if he built a fire or something, but the boat saw him and came and picked him up and took him back to Eretz Israel. And he went back to see his rabbi. And there's some other missing piece of the story. I think it had to do with him like not getting a check or something from the yeshiva that he was at. I can't remember. He went back and talked to his rabbi and told him the story, and I think his rabbi was a what they call him, a Kubalim, a Kabbalist, and his rabbi told him that the whole purpose, or the whole reason why he had to go on that big long crazy journey and get all his stuff stolen and get dumped on an island and think he was going to die, and then eat all the fruit and get picked up, was because some Jew that in a past life didn't say a blessing on an apple or whatever piece of fruit it was. He had to come back, and his rectification, his tikkun, was to be reincarnated as a piece of fruit, and then he had to go through that reincarnation as a piece of fruit, being grown on a tree, and then rotting or being eaten by someone else or some animal over and over again until a Jew came along and said a blessing on the piece of fruit that he was reincarnated into. Until he could finally stop being stuck in a piece of fruit over and over again, and go up to Gunhead and I kind of like apples, but I really don't have adequate teeth to chew them very well. But for the last couple of weeks, there's been an apple that's sitting on the counter. I keep thinking about that story. I keep thinking I should make some make some oatmeal or something and cut up the apple and cook it in the oatmeal and say a blessing for the apple. That's the other deal is if there is a soul in a piece of fruit, it helps if you say a blessing, but if you don't say the right blessing, they'll still have to come back. For an apple, it's a person thanks God for fruit that He brings forth from the trees. I mean, the proper blessing for a Jew in Hebrew is a lot more complex than that. But most of the time, I try to use my own words because that's what we're supposed to do. I do need to do some more research on blessings, though, to make sure I'm not screwing up more than I should, or not screwing up at all. Hopefully. Another thing I keep thinking about lately is stupid movies. I keep thinking about that scene from The Matrix where that one guy meets with Agent Smith and asks to get plugged back in after in exchange for selling out his shipmates because he likes the taste of steak. it's more than that. He likes filling his stomach with more than food. He likes pleasuring himself, even though he knows it's all fake. The analogy for life is, you know, the matrix is what people see and what people think is real. When you slowly peel off the layers, when a person slowly peels off the layers to see what is real, they don't physically, person doesn't physically go to a different place. They're still, they're still in this world. Once a person gets to a certain point, it might be like, living in a ship and eating oatmeal out of a, whatever protein goo or whatever they ate was. Well, if a person gets to that point, it's definitely not suffering. That's because they know that all the physical needs of a person's body are just necessities to keep the body alive while they fulfill their purpose and serve God's will here in this world. So it doesn't matter if it's protein paste or if it's a steak or a piece of bread. But there's one thing that's for sure: the more, 'cause the more pleasure that a person gets here, the more distant they are from the truth and from God. And the only exception to that is if whatever pleasure that if they enjoy, whatever that is, if its only purpose is to fulfill God's will and to sanctify His name. If it's for anything other than that, it's not the truth. And it is only a distraction. And all it does is make more flesh for the worms to eat. One day, with God's help, I'll eventually get out of the first couple of chapters of Perkei Avot. Good evening, sir. How are you? Well, everyone, you know, everyone should say blessings on food and stuff, but it's good just to make it kind of simple, but just use your words and say thank you. I've for not having it can be challenging not having like a structure, like for one to remember it all, and then like when I learn or think of something different, I'll like change it around a little bit, and and then I have a hard time remembering like which like the right way. I'll get kind of screwed up, but it's a learning process. Person just has to do the best that they can, and keep asking for help and keep learning. Biggest thing is to try not to be a liar and a thief. like there are certain prayers that anyone can say, including the goyim, using using psalms like Tehillim, but a person just has to read carefully so they don't say something that is not true, like anything from the Torah or the Tanakh that says anything to do with the Jews, like commandments or prayers for protecting his nation, or I mean, you can say that for if you want God to protect the Jews, but not not in regards to protecting yourself. One thing to keep in mind though is if your heart is in the right place, like truly, and your intent is to look for the truth and to do what he wants, to fulfill his will, and you keep asking for it, and always always admit admit your mistakes and do teshuva when they're shown to you. He's infinitely merciful, and he'll show you the right path. But it's up to us to put forth the effort to look for it. If you don't try to learn, you're not just gonna like lay the Torah out in front of you, like on the street, and be like highlight the right passage or something. Doesn't I don't think it works quite like that for most people. Glad you're doing well. Are you talking about the old TV test pattern kind of stuff? Like the weird like circles and lines and like Indian heads and when I think about all that stuff, it's just so weird. People got so hoodwinked. I guess that's like Shlomo Melech says, there's nothing new under the sun. People have been getting sidetracked and deceived by the Satan since time began. It's just last couple hundred years, things have really ramped up. This time's picking up speed, or maybe not time, but fast approaching. it's really weird, like being a goy that is so immersed in the Torah. It just feels. I mean, a lot of times I feel like feel kind of, I don't know, sad. You know, that there's any Jew that any Jew that's less observant than myself or anyone. But I also wouldn't, you know, I'm not gonna go back. That's for sure. I'm not gonna like, you know, I'll just be I'm not gonna be a wicked person and wait for everyone else to do teshuva. Thinking about how much stuff I've added to just my daily practices in the last year makes me wonder. Like, eventually, I'm gonna reach a like a threshold where it's gonna be like either like this is the line, or you're gonna have to go like all the way. And I know I have like a million light years to go as far as almost everything. But mm, you, I you probably didn't see the first part of the stream. I had to do teshuvah um, for an error that I've been perpetuating for the last over a year about not wasting seed. Like when the only purpose for a man to have relations with a woman, or, anytime the seed leaves the body. I mean, I was mostly correct, but I still left out you know a lot. And there's one thing about the truth: if it's not the whole truth, it's not the truth. It's a lie. And while having the circumstances and the intent to be a vessel for God to bring new life into the world is the the primary and most important aspect of relations. That's not all of it. The second most important thing is pleasing your wife. According to the Torah, the man's pleasure is not taken into account. For a couple reasons. One, just because it's generally not that, it's not an issue. And two, because it's just not something that a guy should really focus on that much at all if he wants to be holy or close to God. He wants to not live like an animal. And the third and least important reason is not to keep him, to keep himself from sin. I mean, so far, I'm not a young man anymore, so I have as intense of a drive as I used to. Well, a lot of it is behavioral and spiritual as well. Like when I was learning, I was watching the series on Hilkot Deot. I think the English translation is like laws of I don't know, like how to behave kind of stuff. I'm not sure what the English words are. Hilkot Deot from the Mishnah Torah. It's like how a decent human being should act. Basically, the Rambam goes into all the ins and outs of how to behave, how to conduct for a person to conduct their life. And one of the things he talks about in there is health. Like I didn't have a doctor for a long time, but now I do. I try to take my doctor's advice. One of the things Rambam says is, I mean, I'm not the best patient, but I try to at least put some stuff into practice. Like do some vigorous exercise before you eat to get your blood flowing. Because the increase in blood flow moves blood to the stomach to help digestion. Because if you're sedentary and then you eat food, all the blood goes from your extremities to your stomach. So the body has to like try to prioritize keeping certain parts of your body functional, while digesting food, and it's like fighting two battles. But the amazing thing about the human body is if you do some like intense physical activity, just like a minute or two, 10, 5 minutes, whatever, just something really intense fast to get your heart rate up, the body instantly starts producing like millions and millions of red blood cells, and suddenly increases the amount of blood in the body. That's something I learned from the Jewish Hashkafa series, where Rav Reuben is reading the Chazon Ish, his book Emunah Bitachon, Faith and Trust. And like the first part of the book, he just goes into like how amazing the body is, like how there's arms and limbs and muscles and ligaments and joints and eyes and ears, and it's kind of interesting. The part on the eyes talks about all the cells in the eyes and the photoreceptors and lots of other stuff. But in the Chazon Ish's book, Emunah Bitachon, he talks about how if a person just looks at the creation, everything from a person's own body to like plants and animals and how all the systems work perfectly, there's like something to make everything function properly. There's like microscopic germs and viruses and molds and fungus to break down decaying, small decaying matter, and macrobiotic life, like little bugs like ants and worms and stuff, and caterpillars that break down the large parts of things, and all those things get eaten by something else, and it just on and on forever. And there's always the perfect amount of everything in the world. It was just the right amount of oxygen and not too much. There's always the right amount of bugs. And the only time there's more bugs than is ideal for people anyway is when God wants to starve people. See, that's the ridiculous thing, you know. In a world that was full of Torah, there would be no one that was to worry about climate change or environmentalism or like extinction of species. Primarily because everyone would know that God runs the world, and the only way to save the planet is to do teshuva, to fulfill the Torah, not not to you know not to recycle or do an internet campaign. Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about that last week. Was the level of level of fear of God or love of God, whatever you want to call it. You know, service of Hashem. Everyone has to start out at fear. You know how long they're just that level. You know, depends. But the fear always has to be there. Whatever gets built on top of it. Fear is the lowest level. You know, fear of loss, like of physical things, like money and health and things like that. And fear of punishment, like you know, both in this world and the next. And then the highest level of fear is fear of severing the connection that you've gained. Fear of hurting him. Not that you know, not that that's possible for people to do. You know, at all. Just those are the words that people kind of understand. Fear of damaging the connection. That's probably the more accurate term. That's the highest level of fear. And the beginning of truly loving God. Anyone that says that they don't fear God, or that they only love him, has no idea what they're talking about. Because a person can't, you know, a person can't love what they don't understand. And if they don't fear God, they don't understand. I mean, maybe there are some people that are just wholly righteous and raised that way, that they just have a really innocent soul that is unblemished, where they don't need they're right, they were born at the level of the highest level of fear, so they don't really need that lower level. At least, you know, it would seem that way. But the problem with that is anything but the most perfect set of circumstances and the all that goes out the window if they don't have the real fear, the very base level of fear of you know of suffering, as to shore everything up. Everyone's got to start at the bottom and build their way up from there. And always remind yourself that you're just a nothing, just a putrid seed that, through God's infinite mercy, was allowed to be born into this world and have the opportunity to fix everything that you've done in the past. Unless you're one of the few people that is a new soul here. And no matter who you are, to be able to earn your bread. Quitting nicotine will be a good, I've been trying to make myself a worthy vessel as well. Slowly. I'm getting old, so it's slow going. That's one thing I was thinking of earlier, was that there's probably no woman that I would want to be with that would want to be with me if I smoked. So it's really good that I don't have to not not that the chances are too likely, but all I can do is my effort. Whatever else happens is up to him. But it's good if some test comes along and I don't have to, that doesn't have to be one more thing I have to pass. It was weird after Yom Kippur, back in September, when I got real serious about doing teshuvah. I got a message from someone trying to set me up with some person that they worked with, and it was like, it was just weird. One, because I wasn't expecting it at all. Two, because they sent me a photo, and it was like, you know, just the like stuck off in my own world for so long that I didn't even know what to say. So I just didn't even respond. It was just so weird. Like, one, any woman that would send a photo over the, to some random person anywhere is probably not someone that I want to be with. At least not without a lot of catching up as far as ideology. Then it was just like, I still don't think I've told them, like, don't send me weird random photos of women or really anything, please, because I don't want to see it. And I was trying to think, like, you know, is this God giving me, like the only opportunity for a wife, and I'm passing it up and just being a weirdo, or am I doing the right thing? And and I was trying to think, like, what are the chances that anyone in the world is going to be able to to be a to be any a match in any aspect of my life, because I'm horribly flawed as far as what most people would consider ideal, like physically and monetarily. I don't think there's very many women that would consider me desirable at all. Well, then on the other hand, what really matters is, like, what a person's really like, and what do they find important. What are the chances that you know that's going to align with what I find important. And the sending a random internet photo to some strange dude she doesn't know is a pretty good clue to the fact that it's going to be a large gap between the 2 points. And so I didn't say anything. And then, like, months passed, and then I went to meet this person, and I said, sorry for not responding to your text a while back, the photo, and I still I didn't know what to say. It's been a long time, and it's the world is just not like not like me, not like how people should be. I mean, not that I know how people should be, but I'm trying to get there. The best, trying to do something anyway. When this person was like, "Yeah, that's really weird," they died. It's like, uh, well, that's too bad, but that kind of makes sense to why I wouldn't have wanted to respond, or at least one more reason. Then they told me like how they died from like an accidental drug overdose from like pills or something. And I was like, well, that's just more more verification that I definitely did the absolute right thing. See, there's all kinds of stuff in life that a person, just questions themselves over whether they did the right thing or not. Even if they knew, they know in their heart that they did. It's just the Satan has a way of like sticking a fork in you and just twisting a lot, trying to get you to just squirm over stuff that you know in your heart you did right. That's one good prayer that I've been asking for since I found out about it. As far as I know, it's permissible because it's not stealing and it's not lying. It's a pretty general thing that every human being should want and ask for help with is for God to remove the Yetzer Hara from in front of us and from behind us. And in front of us is obvious, so we aren't impeded from doing God's will, and we don't fail and commit sins. But removing him from behind us is so that we don't second guess our good deeds and our choices that we made with as accurately and as truthfully and as best accordance with his will as we could at the time. And and also for the times that we failed to not to not uh, not second guess our tshuva. So that when we fail, we admit it, we do teshuva as soon as possible. Ideally, like in that moment, or as close to it as a person can, and try to make the teshuva process as complete as possible, and then once that is done, you're a new person, and and not think about it, other than as a reminder of what you don't want to do again, and use it as a fence to keep you from transgressing again. Yeah, I've thought about that. Like, if there ever is an opportunity, like, I figured the best litmus test, if there's ever going to be a chance to move forward with any woman, is to just send them a link to Rabbi Yaron Rubin's Jewish Hashkafa series. see how far they make it. I mean, it's kind of funny. I think I watched like 2 or 3 of those, and then like 6 months ago or something like that. And then once I really got serious about only learning when I'm supposed to, I got scared, so I stopped learning. Stopped watching and reading anything that wasn't like just general Torah and applicable to everyone, like Jews and Goyim. So I stopped watching the Jewish Hashkafa series, and then some other guy asked if it was okay to watch those. Thank God. And in a recent like Silk the Rabbi lecture from a couple months back, and ever since then I've been watching those. But you know, I pretty much figured I'd already started to basically think like a Jew anyway. I've been watching almost every lecture, pretty much from at least 2 different rabbis for the last year. And it's kind of funny, like so many of the other things Doug talked about is like in the Chazonish's book, and in that, not just in that Jewish Hashkafa lecture series, but like any serious rabbi, like God runs the world, and God makes people. God makes you see. It's not your eye. Like all that stuff. But everyone hears what they want to hear. I thank God a great deal for opening my ears and my eyes to enough of the truth that I was able to remember it. And then run after it as fast as I could. At least as much as I could fight my Yetzer Hara. last last I mean, it seemed like since last Elul, like seemed like most days I just, at least, for the most part, there's been definitely been periods where I was treading water, doing shtiyot most of the time, but foolishness and waste of time. But I think those were not too often, or at least not for too long. But definitely the last month or two, it's I just feel like if I'm not constantly trying to learn or to share what I've learned as much as I can, I'm just like in every spare moment, I'm just wasting time and like killing myself and letting other people die. Like they're all minutes and seconds and hours and years that I'll never get back. And it'll never ever be enough. In a lot of respects, both. Well, it'll never be enough to fix what I've done, to merit not going to Gehinnom, to repair the, to really repair the damage that I've done between me and God, and especially between me and other people. That's, God is extremely merciful and forgiving. But between us and other people, it's definitely not so much. So the only other hope there is to try to save as many people as possible. To weight the scale as heavy on the good side as as anyone possibly can. I know I'm not the only person who wants that. Whoever you are, listening to this, you should want the same thing. And there's only one way to do that. Anything else is just murdering people. Whether it looks that way or it doesn't. That's the truth. every person that doesn't find the Torah won't make it. And even a lot of those that do might not, because once you find it, you have to learn, and then you have to act. And there's a lot of distractions between there, between here and the finish line. Yeah, there are no red pills. There's only the truth. But that is the truth. I mean, it's all in the Torah. But like I've mentioned numerous times, it's hard enough if a person speaks and understands the holy language, Lashon Kodesh, actual the Hebrew of the Torah. Even just speaking and understanding modern Hebrew is enough of a setback. But even if you do understand the language of the Torah, and not modern Hebrew, it's still hard enough if you don't think like the sages do. If you don't have that kind of mentality ingrained in you, or at the very least, if a person doesn't use that as a guide to make sure that they're on the right path. Because if you it's called finding a friend. If you can't find a friend for your interpretation of the Torah, it's not right at all. Especially if you're a goy. But this really applies to anyone. But there's another rule that's like at least as important as especially at first. You shouldn't go looking to find a friend to shouldn't find it like think of a new insight and then go like search through every sage for the last 3,000 years trying to see if your insight is accurate or correct. You waste a lot of time doing stupid stuff like that. Well, what you really need to, what a person really needs to do is see what the majority opinion is. Learn enough of the guideposts of how to think and how to interpret things first. Before you go wasting like hours or days trying to dig through 100 books and sources trying to figure out if some new interpretation that you had on some verses is correct or just more garbage. It's getting late though. I'm sorry for swearing. Please forgive me. Slowly, slowly. I've mentioned the process that I've been through to reach this point was definitely nothing I ever thought was going to happen. I mean, I basically started out as like a light version of one of those guys that Rabbi Earl Rubin talks about, like the Nazis that listen to his lectures. I mean, I wasn't ever like a full-blown Nazi, but there was definitely periods like from like 2015 to maybe 2019 or so where I definitely had severe fascist sympathies. To where I let honest feelings, I let the truth become sidetracked by the Satan into and was and twisted into tendencies and traits of Amalek for sure. At least one aspect of Amalek. Being a murderer is definitely not one of the being a murderer is bad. It's evil. Well, there's far worse things than being a murderer. Most people just consider it going to school or intellectual endeavors or rational debate or helping people into the modern world or modern age, modern thinking, whatever. But the verse from Mishle from Proverbs of Shlomo Amelech, King Solomon, is always seems very applicable. Nothing new under the sun. There was atheists and philosophers and scientists and all that stuff back in the days of Shlomo Amelech and even long before him. They built the Tower of Babel. There's nothing better a person can do than get someone else to learn and observe the Torah, especially a Jew. And there's nothing worse than the opposite of that. You know, whatever it is a person uses, whether they, you know, acknowledge it or do it knowingly or not, whatever, you know, words or influence they exert on people, they cause them to move away from the Torah, even the slightest bit, is the worst thing in the world. And that is on the lake. Cutting off the hindmost, the stragglers who are far from God, or at least, you know, farther than they should be, far enough to get cut off. I'm not sure. I haven't read the verses or the Torah portions that are related to that section of the Torah. But I've heard rabbis talk about it when the children of Israel were in the desert. They were protected by a cloud of God's protection, where no evil could penetrate it. All the snakes and scorpions would either die or get like pushed out. A water, you know, a river of fresh water followed them all throughout the desert. So the only way that anyone could be harmed was if they were outside of that cloud, if they were not stuck to God in the desert, in the midbar. You're welcome, Lee. It was good talking with you. You have a good night as well. I go inside, try to warm up and go to sleep. Hopefully everyone can keep doing Teshuvah. And if you haven't started, you should start now, because you're never going to get more time. And try to spread as much Torah in the world as you can. Even if that's just sharing a link of some lecture that you watch. Definitely not this one though. Go share Rabbi Aaron Rubin's lectures or something. May his name be praised.